Long before Julius Caesar became the most powerful man in Rome, he was simply a young aristocrat born into a fading noble family. Rome was not yet an empire. It was still a republic, unstable, divided, and filled with ambition. Power did not belong to kings. It belonged to those who could take it. Caesar was born in 100 BC into the Julian family, an ancient but declining Roman lineage. His family claimed descent from Venus, the goddess of love, giving Caesar a symbolic connection to divine heritage. But in reality, his early life was far from powerful. Rome was dominated by political elites, and Caesar had to fight for every step forward. As a young man, Caesar faced danger early. During the dictatorship of Sulla, political purges swept across Rome. Caesar refused to obey Sulla's orders, risking his life. Forced to flee, he lived as a fugitive for a time, learning survival, patience, and resilience. These experiences shaped him. Caesar learned that power in Rome was fragile and that only the bold survived. When Caesar returned to Rome, he began building his political career carefully. He was charismatic, confident, and understood the importance of public image. Unlike many Roman elites, he connected with ordinary citizens. He spoke with energy, promised reform, and positioned himself as a leader of the people rather than the aristocracy. But Caesar knew politics alone was not enough. In Rome, true power came from military success. He sought command, and eventually he was given governorship in Gaul, a vast and dangerous territory north of Italy. What followed would transform Caesar from a politician into a legend. For nearly a decade, Caesar led Roman legions through one of the most brutal and successful military campaigns in Roman history. He fought powerful Gallic tribes, crossed rivers under fire, built siege works in hostile territory, and demonstrated unmatched strategic brilliance. Victory followed victory. Gaul fell under Roman control. But the conquest did more than expand Rome. It created Caesar's personal army. His soldiers became fiercely loyal to him. They marched with him, fought for him, and trusted him. In Rome, this kind of loyalty was dangerous and powerful. Meanwhile, back in Rome, political tension was rising. The Senate watched Caesar's growing influence with fear. He was no longer just a general. He was becoming a symbol of power, a man capable of reshaping the republic itself. The stage was set for confrontation, and soon Caesar would make a decision that would change history forever. By the time Julius Caesar secured his command in Gaul, Rome was already watching him closely. The Senate saw Gaul as a distant frontier, a difficult and dangerous region. But for Caesar, it was an opportunity, a chance to prove himself not just as a politician, but as one of the greatest military leaders Rome had ever seen. The Gallic Wars began in 58 BC. What followed was nearly a decade of relentless campaigning. Caesar faced powerful tribal coalitions, fierce resistance, and constant danger. Yet, battle after battle, he adapted, outmaneuvered his enemies, and expanded Roman control deep into Gaul. His leadership was bold, calculated, and relentless. One of his greatest challenges came from a Gallic leader named Vercingetorix, a warrior who united the tribes against Rome. The conflict reached its climax at the Siege of Alesia in 52 BC. Caesar's forces were surrounded, outnumbered, and trapped between two enemy armies. It seemed impossible to survive. But Caesar did what he always did. He adapted. He built massive fortifications, defended against attacks from both inside and outside, and ultimately crushed the Gallic resistance. The victory at Alesia cemented Roman dominance in Gaul and cemented Caesar's reputation as a brilliant commander. Yet his greatest weapon was not only his sword, it was his words. Caesar wrote detailed accounts of his campaigns, the commentaries on the Gallic War. These reports were sent back to Rome, shaping public opinion and portraying him as a hero of the Republic. While he conquered Gaul, he was also conquering the imagination of Rome.
His popularity grew rapidly. But popularity in Rome was dangerous. The Senate, led by powerful figures such as Pompey, began to see Caesar as a threat. Once allies, Caesar and Pompey now stood on opposite sides of a growing political divide. The Republic was weakening, and power was shifting toward those who commanded armies rather than those who debated in the Senate. As Caesar's term in Gaul neared its end, the Senate ordered him to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. Without his army, Caesar would lose his protection and likely face political destruction. He stood at a crossroads: obey the Senate and lose everything, or defy Rome itself. In 49 BC, Julius Caesar made his choice. He led his army across the Rubicon River, the legal boundary no Roman general was allowed to cross with troops. It was an act of rebellion, a declaration of civil war. According to legend, Caesar spoke the words that would echo through history: "The die is cast." Rome was about to turn against itself.
When Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon in 49 BC, there was no turning back. The Republic had been challenged, and Rome now stood on the brink of civil war. Panic spread across the city. Senators fled. Pompey, once Caesar's ally and now his greatest rival, gathered forces to resist him. Caesar moved quickly. He marched into Italy with speed and precision, capturing city after city with little resistance. Pompey and his supporters retreated east, preparing for a decisive confrontation. Rome itself fell under Caesar's control, but the war was far from over. The final clash came in 48 BC at the Battle of Pharsalus in Greece. Pompey commanded a larger army. He had the support of the Senate, the wealth of the eastern provinces, and confidence in victory. But Caesar had something else: discipline, loyalty, and experience. His soldiers had fought with him for years. They trusted him completely. The battle was fierce. Outnumbered but strategically superior, Caesar defeated Pompey. The Republic's strongest defender had fallen. Pompey fled to Egypt seeking refuge, but he was betrayed and killed before Caesar even arrived. When Caesar saw Pompey's severed head, he did not celebrate. The war had been brutal, but Pompey had once been his ally. Still, victory changed everything. Caesar returned to Rome as the undisputed master of the Roman world. One by one, his remaining enemies were defeated in Africa and Spain. Resistance collapsed. The civil war was over, and Caesar stood alone at the top. He did not call himself king. Rome hated kings. Instead, he took the title of dictator, first temporarily, then for 10 years, and finally, in 44 BC, dictator for life. To many Romans, Caesar was a reformer. He reorganized government, reduced corruption, improved infrastructure, and expanded citizenship across the empire. He centralized power, stabilized Rome, and brought order after years of chaos. But to others, he was becoming something dangerous: a ruler with too much power, a man above the Republic. Whispers began to spread through the Senate. Some feared Caesar would declare himself king. Others feared the Republic was already dead. A group of senators formed a conspiracy, convinced that killing Caesar would restore freedom to Rome. Among them was a man Caesar trusted, Brutus. The stage was set for one of the most famous moments in history: the Ides of March. By early 44 BC, Julius Caesar stood at the height of his power. Rome was under his control, his enemies defeated, and his authority unmatched. He had reformed the calendar, strengthened the government, and brought stability after years of civil war. To many, he was the savior of Rome, but to others, he was the destroyer of the Republic. Rumors spread that Caesar intended to make himself king, a title Romans had rejected for centuries. The fear of tyranny grew within the Senate. A group of senators, believing they were acting in the name of liberty, formed a conspiracy. They called themselves the Liberators. Their plan was simple: Caesar had to die. On March 15, 44 BC, the Ides of March, Caesar entered the Senate House.
He was unarmed, surrounded by men he knew, men he trusted. As he took his seat, the conspirators moved. One struck first, then another. Blades flashed. Chaos erupted. Caesar was attacked from all sides. According to tradition, when he saw Brutus among the attackers, he spoke the words that would echo through history, "Et tu, Brute." Moments later, Julius Caesar was dead. The conspirators believed they had saved the Republic. They expected Rome to celebrate. Instead, the city fell into shock and uncertainty. Caesar had been loved by many, especially the people and the army. His death did not restore peace, it unleashed chaos. Civil war returned. Power struggles consumed Rome once again. Caesar's supporters rallied behind his adopted heir, Octavian. Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal general, rose to defend his legacy. The Republic, already weakened, could not survive another storm. Within a generation, Rome would no longer be a republic at all. It would become an empire. Julius Caesar never wore a crown, never officially became king, and never ruled as emperor. Yet his actions destroyed the old system and opened the path for a new one. His rise to power reshaped Rome forever. He was not just a general, not just a politician. He was the turning point in Roman history, the man who ended the Republic, and the man who made the empire possible.